Thank you. Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining us for another Mentor Monday event. It looks like we have a pretty split audience here, and I noticed that we also have some alumni joining us today, so we have a great group. Today, I have the great pleasure of moderating a wonderful panel of my outstanding classmates. My name is Holly, a first-year medical student at DGSOM. I majored in molecular cell and developmental biology, MCDB, and minored in biomedical research at UCLA for undergrad. I took a gap year continuing the research I was doing for an undergrad as a staff research associate while applying for medical school. I was also a community college transfer student and can chime in if any of you in the audience has any transfer specific questions. So now for our panelists, please tell us a little bit about yourself. Where did you go for undergrad? What did you study? And if you took one or more gap years, what did you do during the time?
I can start us off if that's cool. All right, so hi everyone. I'm really excited for this. I love that we have such a diverse little group here. It's going to be great. My name's Anwaisha Dubey. I went to Johns Hopkins University for undergrad, where I studied chemical and biomolecular engineering. And then for my gap years, I took 2 gap years and I worked at the hospital, Johns Hopkins Hospital, as a patient advocate. It had a really long title, but that's basically what it narrowed down to. So I spent my entire day working in the oncology department at these 2 specific units where I worked on and creating like efficiency in the way that we worked during our day-to-day life, I guess, at the hospital, as well as just like making sure the patients had a great experience. And then I also worked in my research lab that I was working on during the entirety of my undergrad. So that's my background. Also, apologies, I kind of have lost my voice. So I'm doing the best I can, but if you don't understand me, I am so sorry. I will repeat myself if you ask. All right. Great to see you guys, or I guess sort of see you guys. I'm gonna pass it to my background buddy, Austin, if he wants to go.
I love that background. I'm Austin. I'm also a first-year medical student, originally from Sacramento, California. I went to undergrad at a small liberal arts school called McAllister, which is in Minnesota. Let's see. I took 3 gap years after graduating. I majored in English literature and biology, and I took 3 gap years and worked in a clinical research role in a cardiac arrhythmia center. So studied a lot of heart rhythm abnormalities and also coach soccer on the side. And I will popcorn to Rohini.
Austin. Hi, everyone. My name is Rohini. I graduated this May from Arizona State, where I studied biology and business public service and policy. And so, yeah, I didn't take a gap year. So I'll pass it to David.
Thanks, Rohini. Hey, everyone. My name's David. I grew up in the Bay Area and went to UC Berkeley for undergrad, not too far. I majored in mechanical engineering and I graduated 2017. And then I spent 3 gap years over in Baltimore at Johns Hopkins. I did a pre-med post-bac because I decided to switch kind of late so I can answer questions about what a post-bac is like. And then I did 1 year of clinical research, kind of continue the research at the hospital. And then I did 1 year of a master's in biomedical engineering at Johns Hopkins as well.
Great. It looks like we also have a very diverse panel with us today, and I'm excited for y'all to hear what they have to share. So the first question for you all is, what are some things you wish you knew as pre-medical students? Are there anything you would have done differently?
I can start us off. I don't know about necessarily having done anything differently, but I think that when I talk to a lot of my friends who are pre-med, one thing that I always encourage them to do is know that there isn't necessarily a recipe. And you can see from all of the way that we introduced ourselves that we all had different paths to medical school. So don't feel like there are specific things that you have to do or you won't get into medical school. Of course, there are the things that medical schools are looking for, but there are so many different ways that you can go about doing them. So you should always be thinking about what are your interests, what are things that are going to make you happy and that you're going to get something out of it. And that should always be the first and foremost thing that you're doing, because I think that's the reason that we all want to go into medicine, is because, you know, there are things about it that we're passionate about. So you should always, as cliche as it sounds, like go for the things that you're passionate about and make you happy. And if you're doing something and you're thinking like, this is really draining, I don't really like this, it doesn't hurt to, you know, say that you want to try something else, because if you're not enjoying what you're doing, that'll carry over to other aspects of your life, and you should try and be able to, you know, have those passions.
I completely agree with that, everything that Rohini just said as well. I think that that medical schools are basically looking for if you have passion for what you do, and the best way to see that is by doing the things that really interest you. And so when you ever go into an interview, you can basically talk about things and that passion comes through, and that's like the perfect mixture of what could get you into medical school. I also think it's great to get some clinical experience under your belt, because that really informs your decision on if you should become a doctor. I know that before I went to college and I did shadowing, I kind of just had this like very superficial view of what medicine was, and it was very wrong from what it actually is. And I still think I have a lot more to learn as a medical student, but at least the little time that I had being in the hospital, working with doctors, physicians, nurses, PAs, all those people every single day really made a difference in terms of like what my understanding of medicine is and what I want to later do in medicine. And all of those things, I think, again, work towards making you a passionate individual, a concerned individual, and just make you a person who's like, who actually knows what they want to do and what they want to do in medicine specifically.
Yeah, I can weigh in. I would definitely just want to echo what's already been said about you know, exploring other things, and also making sure, you know, you really do want to do this. And one question that just came up in the Q&A was about studying abroad while you're in undergrad. And I did study abroad in Scotland in my junior year, and for 1 semester. And that was a great experience. That's something I would definitely recommend if you can fit it in. So what I did when I studied abroad was a kind of combo. So I took a human anatomy course, which worked with my biology major, and is also become like super useful in the anatomy blocks that we've had so far. But that was only 1 class, and I took 3 classes, and the other ones were like public policy classes about the city I was living in, and like Scottish culture stuff that I just otherwise would never have learned about. And those are really great experiences that I'm really happy I partook in. So I think when it comes to undergrad, you definitely have to check certain boxes. You have to do all the prereqs. You have to, you know, do the things that all applicants do. But I think there's still space to explore other things, like taking other classes, potentially majoring in something besides biology, like mechanical engineering or English. And, you know, much like Rohini said, there's no one way to do it. There's no recipe other than just like meeting the baseline requirements. I would say use that other time to really explore things you like, whether that's theater, music, sports, you know, whatever. Just make the most of your time in undergrad, because I think the other part is the further along you get, the more specialized you get. So right now, you know, we're only studying medicine rather than like social studies or English or whatever. So do it while you can, I think is what I would say.
Yeah, I'll add a little something. There are a lot of people on this call, and probably not everyone's going to end up going to med school, which is a great thing. we can't all be doctors. We need other people too. And what I'll say is I kind of decided to switch over a little bit late, like senior year of undergrad. I remember winter break, like I was all ready to dig into an electrical engineering book. And then I was just like, you know what, this is not where I want to go. And I guess what I learned from the whole experience is to really like challenge yourself to think about where you're headed with the activities that you're doing, and if that's really where you want to be. And so like I was at Berkeley, and it was very, there was a lot of tech culture because it was the Bay Area, and it's easy to get swept up in that. I know a lot of people who like wanted to do computer science just because like doing computer science was kind of the cool thing. And now they're not that happy because like now they're just doing these computer science jobs. So the same thing applies when you're thinking about being a doctor. You know, maybe there's been pressure to go into medicine throughout your life. And so this plays into what Anwesha was touching upon, like just get that exposure in the clinical setting. Like I know it's hard right now during COVID. You guys are on top of it. You have plenty of time. Like I said, I decided senior year, so you're like 3 years ahead of me. But yeah, just take the time to kind of like sculpt, like inform that vision of what your future will look like with the pathway that you're headed down, and just make sure it's somewhere that you're going to be happy. That's what I'd say. Just keep your happiness at the forefront of your exploration.
I really want to echo, oh, sorry, Holly, right before you go for it. David, what David just said is so true, that there's so much time. Like we have classmates that literally had completely different careers, decided in their like mid 30s that they want to go to UCLA, to any school, to med school. And like they made it, they're here, it worked out for them. So it really, there's no checklist, there's no like recipe. It's just about like what you want to do and what you're passionate about. And it's just, yeah, you got to decide for yourself what you want to do, and you have so much time to do it.
Thank you for that. Has any of you faced any challenges? We kind of touched on managing time. There's also imposter syndrome is also very common. What were some challenges you faced during undergrad, and what do you wish you knew when you were facing those challenges in hindsight?
Okay, so I had a lot of health related issues during undergrad, and they definitely set me back quite a bit. And I remember just being terrified that I was falling behind. Again, I'm telling you guys now, you have so much time. You literally have enough time to do what you want to do. But I didn't realize that when I was going through undergrad. So I saw like all of my classmates, I was class of 2018, applying in their junior year, and I was like, oh no, I'm falling behind. I'm literally going to be so old when I graduate. It was a big concern for me. And so I like postponed my MCAT so many times because I was just terrified I was going to do poorly. I had like concussions during that time. So I really just want to say, like, just relax. It's going to be okay. If you need to take time for yourself, if you have any health issues, or you have like a big obstacle that's in your way, a financial problem, familial relationship, whatever it is, take the time that you need to get better, to strengthen yourself, and then go forward and do whatever you have to do, the MCAT, a clinical experience, volunteering, whatever. There's time. You come first. You matter more than anything else. So yeah, that's a big thing that I want to tell you guys, because I struggled with that so much. It's you. You do you. You're the best.
Yeah, I would definitely echo that. I think after meeting some of our classmates who, like was mentioned earlier, they're in their 30s, you know, obstacles come up and a lot of times they're out of our control. You know, one of the most helpful pieces of advice I received when I was in undergrad and my gap years was like, it's not a race to get there. You know, trust me, you know, from what I hear from fellows and attending physicians, they're kind of like, I wish I could just go back to college and hang out. Because they're just so busy. So, you know, getting there next year versus the year after probably is going to make a huge difference. And if it feels like too much right now, you know, whatever is on your plate, if it's too much to handle in addition to working towards medical school, like you can space it out. You can do it over more than 1 year or 2 years, or for you, first years on the call, you know, you still have a ton of time. Like, don't worry about doing it tomorrow or today or tonight. And also in undergrad, I think other times I would say when there were obstacles, you know, really try to build up like a support network of friends, family, whoever it is, mentors in your life, because these obstacles, it's probably not the only obstacle you ever face. There'll be more down the road, and really cultivating that support network will go a long way, because it's really a marathon, not a sprint.
Yeah, very well said. And just to kind of put a different perspective in, when I was in community college, I kept hearing that if you go to community college, if you take all your prerequisite classes at a community college, you can't get into med school. And that was very, very discouraging, because I read on different forums that medical schools don't like community college courses and whatnot, but those are very circumstantial decisions that they're making. But if you went to community college and you had to take those classes in order to transfer, in order to advance your education, that's completely okay. I took my entire prerequisite at a community college, and I'm here, I'm fine. So don't be discouraged by that. And another thing is, I think throughout undergrad, it's like the time you'll make mistakes, you'll learn, you'll reflect, you'll refine your methods. So I think it's okay. Don't take setbacks. It's a very generic advice, but don't take setbacks. If you think medicine is right for you, then go at it. It doesn't matter what other people say. If you think you can do it, you can do it, and take however many years, however many struggles or different opportunities you need to do in order to get to medical school. Yeah, so I'll move on to the next question. So what are some of the things you wish you knew when you were applying for medical school? Big question.
I can talk about this a little bit. I think I was very cautious when I applied, and I applied very broadly. Honestly, more broadly than most people told me to. And I think I was very happy I did that. A lot of times, like very early in the process, when you're deciding like, where should I send my application out to? Like, you really don't know that much about these schools. Like maybe you've looked at their website or something, or you saw that they're ranked 15 on the US World News Report. But you don't really get a feeling for the vibe until you go there. And I found that sometimes I would go, like I went to interviews and was like pleasantly surprised by like how cool a place was. And then other places that I thought I would love, I was just like, I don't see myself fitting in there. So definitely apply very broadly. And then the other piece of advice is don't feel like there's a lot you can do to improve your chances of getting into medical school during the process. Like once you've clicked submit on your primary, it's not over. I'm sorry to say, but like you have to put try to put effort into preparing for your interviews and send those thank you letters, and just be as thoughtful as you can through the process, and indicate your interest to the schools that you're interested in. Don't be kind of quiet about it. Let them know how you're feeling, and those kinds of small gestures can really go a long way. So I would just say, like, really push through to the finish line, and it'll definitely help.
I think another thing that I would say too is that we don't really have like a solid metric for what medical schools are like. Like, well, yes, we have the rankings, but I really wouldn't pay too much attention to them, because quite honestly, between med school number 1 and med school 100, like you're not going to find a real difference in the quality of education. It's really just about like the extra opportunities that you have. Like that's different, right? You're going to get a great education no matter which medical school you go to. So I wouldn't like be so bogged down if like you aren't sure you'll get into a T10, or like you get interviews from only like the 50s to 70s. Like it doesn't really make a difference. Like it literally doesn't. So don't get scared by that at all. And also, like, if you're applying broadly and you really like a T10 and you have like, you're very afraid that you don't have the stats for it or something, just go for it. Just try it. Like, reach for the moon and you'll end up with the stars, is what I like to say. So don't undervalue yourself, but still be cautious, I guess, is what I'm trying to say.
Awisha, do you want to clarify?
Yeah, I can say that. So like there are like a lot of rankings out there, right? So it's like T10 is top 10 medical schools, which again doesn't really have any sort of valuable metric attached to it. It's just a ranking based on a system, and the system can be flawed. So just don't pay attention to that. Go to the school that is good for you.
Yeah, and does anyone have any wants to share any misconceptions they've heard about the MCAT, writing essays, interviewing, and deciding where to go for medical school?
I can tackle the last part of that question, deciding where to go for medical school. So for me, when I was deciding my school list, one of the biggest factors I was considering was like, how far do I want to move? So thinking about like, what are your priorities? And the first thing I did was I tried to consider what are the schools that are closer to home or are in areas where I have family or I have friends, because having a support system in medical school is really important. And of course, you won't have friends and family everywhere, and applying broadly is still important. So I made sure that I still added uh, more schools just to err on the side of caution. So beyond regional location of the school that I was applying for, I also considered what were the opportunities that they had there. So like what Anwesha said, all medical schools are going to, have like great quality clinical education, and they're all going to have like places to volunteer, but thinking about what are things that, going back to your passions, what are things that you're doing that you want to be able to continue doing, want to explore. So for me, that was working with people who are from underserved communities, and particularly people who are experiencing homelessness. That was something that I had done in undergrad, which I really wanted to be able to do in medical school. So when I was applying to medical schools, I was largely applying to schools that were in urban areas where I would get to work with underserved populations. So I think everybody's going to have a different way that they go about it. And that's great because everybody has different things that they're looking for. So really considering what are the things that matter to you about your medical school? Is it the location? Is it the service opportunities? Is there something that you're involved in that you want to be able to do? Is being in a large city important to you versus being small? And I know while you're going through the application process, something that you might tell yourself, which is what I told myself, is I'm happy going anywhere. I'll go to any school that takes me. But I do think that being a little picky about some things when you're applying will really help, because applying to medical school is really expensive. So being able to like narrow your school list based off of like, if you get into this school and you get into somewhere else, would you still pick this school? I think is a good way to go about it.
Great. And we can also talk a little bit about the interview process, since we haven't touched on that earlier. What were your expectations for how medical school interviews would be like, and what was the reality for you?
Well, the interview day, I think, was kind of like it's been described online. Basically, you're at the school for the whole day. Though I guess this year it's slightly different. It's very different because of COVID. But essentially, you're at the school for the whole day. You talk to the other applicants that are with you in the morning generally, and then you get a little snippet about what the school is like. You get a tour, and then you have interviews either in the morning or in the afternoon, depending on how the school is set up. And then they also sometimes have mixers like the night before or afterwards, and that's kind of what the interview day looks like. But again, every school is really different and everybody's vibe is very different. So like I remember coming to UCLA's interview and it was absolutely fantastic. It was very structured. But like a couple of the other interviews that I went to, they really just kind of gave us a paper copy of like what the day was going to look like, and then just like left us to ourselves. And that was like a little unnerving and very strange, but yeah, so it really just depends. I definitely like the ones that were structured a lot more, because I don't know, I felt like the school really cared about me, and that went on to inform my decision about where I wanted to go. But yeah, that's basically what the day is like, and it's really, really fun. Like I thought I'd be stressed the entire time I was at the interview, but like I just enjoyed meeting other people so much. Like they're just such cool applicants, and they eventually become your classmates, and it's incredible. I really, really enjoyed just like learning about all of these different like avenues that people took. Like I think I like met this one person who was straight up like a museum docent, and like now they're applying to medical school, and so they were telling me about all these like art pieces that they're gathering for their like museum, and I was like, this is so random and this is so cool. So I really, really enjoyed the day.
Yeah, one other thing about interviews that I really want to mention is how helpful and supportive like current medical students are. So especially here at UCLA and some of the other California schools I interviewed at, a lot of medical students remember exactly what it was like to go through the whole interview process, and they want to help you out as much as possible. So don't be afraid to reach out to current students. If you know any of them or have some sort of like indirect connection to one of them, feel free to ask questions. I know I really appreciated the student who hosted me when I came in because I was coming from out of state. He was so helpful, answered a lot of questions, really kind of reassured me that it's fine. Everybody's really nice. Like they want you to succeed. So it's I think one thing, potential misconception is like they're out to make sure, or like to get you, where they're like, oh, you don't know this, like you're out. That's not really how it works. It's more like just tell us about yourself. Like, what interesting information is there that you can share with us, and how are you going to contribute to the overall school mission and school, like student body. So it's not like anybody's mean. Everybody's very supportive, very nice, very friendly, and they just try to provide a way for you to show them who you are.
Yeah, and I want to emphasize how friendly the interviews were for me compared to many of the pre-med orgs here at UCLA. Those are probably going to be the toughest interviews you'll ever have. I know that some orgs have multiple rounds of interviews, some have MMIs, and it's just overall very stressful. And I thought that was going to be the atmosphere of medical school interviews, but it was the complete opposite experience for me. People just wanted to get to know me as a person. I didn't feel the need to have to try to recite my resume or try to appear impressive or anything like that. I just, chat. It was just like a conversation with the interviewers about any topic. So a lot more casual and low key compared to what my expectations were based on how competitive the pre-med orgs here were. And does anyone have anything to share about the MCAT? Anything you wish you knew when you were studying?
I can go for that one. I think it's okay to take it more than once. There's a lot of rumors about like if you take it twice, then your second score has to be like way better than your first one and all this stuff. I think the first piece of advice is it's okay to push it back if you feel like you're not ready. But the second piece going right with that is like you can never really be like fully ready. Like you're never going to know every single piece of information that can potentially be on the exam. So if you feel like you're close enough, then you probably are. And even if, due to nerves or circumstantial situation, whatever, you don't perform like you feel like you can, it's okay to go for it again. I personally took it twice and improved on the second one. So like, don't get discouraged to the point of not trying anymore if you don't perform up to your full ability on the first try. Just try again. It'll be okay.
Totally agree. One other thing I'll add is it's okay to do better on certain sections than others. Personally, I didn't have a very balanced score, and there's a whole hoopla on Reddit about, if you don't have a balanced score, you're screwed, and none of that's true. And also the other thing I'll say is just if you're kind of doing the thing where you're studying for like one summer, just make sure you maintain a really nice balanced lifestyle. Don't neglect exercise and, hanging out with friends, doing all of the things that you normally do. Just try to have fun with it. And personally, I prefer to take it slow. So I kind of took I took like closer to 6 months and just like did a little bit at a time. And I found it a little bit easier for me, especially because I had a slightly weaker content base. I had just done the post-bac year, so like I hadn't been studying the biology and chemistry for that long. So for me, like spacing it out and just like doing little bits at a time was really helpful.
The thing I will say about the MCAT too is that as great as resources like SDN and Reddit and like even this mentor panel is, you get a lot of different ways that you can study, and I think that helps a lot. But at the end of the day, it's really about how you study best. And that can look like whatever it is that works for you. And don't stress if it's something that if you need to study in like 2 weeks and get it done, you can do that. That's what I did. It wasn't fun, but I did it. If you need to take months, take months. It's really about like what works best for you, what you're comfortable with. And like, again, I think the MCAT is a lot more about like it's like a strength, like a running a marathon, I guess. It's about your mindset. I think a lot more than like the knowledge base. Like the knowledge base has to be there, you have to study, but like you can't get scared is the thing. Like you need to be as comfortable as you possibly can and go into that test being like, I'm about to kill this. And like, that's it. Like, this is the end. And you can do it. You really can. So like, just be as comfortable as you possibly can. Don't like be unnerved by what somebody else has done. Just like focus on what works for you.
And to add what Anwaisha said, everyone has a different approach to studying for the MCAT. And I think it'll also vary depending on if you're still in school or recently out of school versus if you've been out of school for a while. Because I took it while I was still in college. I didn't take as much time as I probably would have if I was out of college for a good amount of time. And for people who do plan to take the MCAT while in college and like balancing that with coursework, I think one piece of advice that I would give and that I would give to myself would be classes. Try and really conceptually understand what's happening rather than taking the approach of I'm going to memorize this content or I'm going to learn it. And then after I take my exam, I don't really need to worry about this until I study for the MCAT. If you can make your approach such that I really want to learn this once and really understand what's happening, when you go to study for the MCAT, it becomes a lot easier because you don't have to reteach yourself content that you already learned. So as much as you can, learn it the first time so that you don't have to put extra work on yourself.
Thank you for that. And one more practical thing that I want to let y'all know is that MCAT sign up is actually quite competitive if you're in an urban area. So keep an eye out. I think there's 2 sign up dates a year. One is sometime in October, the other is in February. I don't know. And each time you'll have up to 6 months worth of dates you can sign up for. And I recommend you to try to sign up as early as the spots, as the registration opens, because ideally you want a location that's close to you at a date that you like. I definitely did not know that and had to travel a little further than I like for my MCAT. And that was just an additional source of stress for me. Yeah.
Oh, were you going to say something else?
No, go ahead.
It's a really good piece of advice, especially because the AMC who operates the MCAT runs on Eastern time. So for us in California, that's a couple hours ahead. So I think when I signed up for the MCAT, I woke up at 4 a.m. or 5 a.m. But the nice thing is they have a Twitter. So if you like make a Twitter for the sole purpose of following them, they tell you when they're going to release it. Like time-wise, the MCAT sign up. So that's one helpful thing. And if you know anybody else who's pre-med, maybe like wake each other up with a phone call. My boyfriend and I both were signing up for the MCAT at the same time. So he like called me at 5 a.m. to tell me to sign up, which was helpful because I'm not a morning person.
Absolutely. And does anyone want to share anything that they learned during their essay writing time? It was not fun times, but did y'all learn anything that you want to share?
Like writing essays for the application, that was a lot. You really just have to kind of like push through. I did find that like this is more so for secondaries. It helps to keep like an Excel document and like track when you receive a secondary, and then like I tried to generally get them out 2 weeks later at most, 2 weeks later. And I think that helped quite a bit because then I was like organized. And then in writing secondaries, I found that like the more secondaries I wrote, the more they like appeared later, like the less I had to write later because like questions repeated themselves. And that's something that you can do post submitting your primary and you're waiting for your secondary, because like you will get like a diversity question, like why this school question for like nearly every single medical school. So you can really like draft out like a template for that one pretty early on. So you don't have to like rewrite it when you finally get those secondaries, and you have to keep submitting. In terms of like the primary application, where you have like your personal statement, you have your work and activities section, and if you're applying to Texas, because I applied to Texas schools because your girl is from Texas, there's like 2 other application essays as well. So I would get started on those fairly early. Like it's submitted in June, and I think I started writing mine like early May. The Texas one is submitted in May, so maybe you need to do more if you want to go to Texas. I don't know. This might not be the crowd for that, but anyway, definitely write it early. Definitely put down thoughts of like, what are the skills or values of myself that you really value, or that you really like about yourself? Like, what do you want to get across? And then I would pick like 2 or 3 anecdotes that reflect those values, and try to carry them throughout your personal statement and your work and activities. So it's like this like little bundle of like, I'm a person that really loves global health and collaboration. Like, this is me. And I think it's really great to like see that reflected in multiple parts of your essay, of your application, because then it feels like, yes, you are this person who is authentically a person who loves global health and collaboration. You kind of see what I mean there. So yes, that's something I would do as well. And I would also have people look at your personal statement for sure, but also work in activities if you can, multiple times, like multiple people and multiple times. Like, go through at least, or maybe not, it's your journey, you guys do what you want. But I definitely wrote like 3 iterations of my personal statement, and that was definitely necessary because it got better every single time. So yeah, get started early, get a lot of people to look at it, think about what you want to get across, and get it across in multiple parts of your essay, of your application.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. Especially if you apply to a lot of schools, 20 or more, you could get as many as like 50 essays you have to write. A lot of which will be some variation of a similar question. But if you think, you spend an hour on each essay, which most likely you'll spend more than that, you're going to be doing 100 hours of work. And for me, like when I studied English in school, I had to write a lot of papers and stuff. There comes a point where you read it and it's just like hitting your head and not going in at all. And you really need like other people to just take a look at it, because there are a lot of times where some of my friends, I showed it to him and he's like, this sentence doesn't even make sense. Like, what are you even saying? And I had no idea because I just stared at it for so long. So really, don't be afraid to ask for help. Do it in a nice, respectful way. It's not like, this is due in 5 minutes, can you look at it? It's more like, can you help me with this? Especially if you have other friends who are applying to medical school, you're all in this together. You read some of theirs, they read some of yours. Really just try to remember that you don't have to do it all by yourself. And in fact, it's way better if you don't do it by yourself, if you do it with other people, partly for the support and editing your work, but also for like emotional and moral support too.
Yo, if you guys have someone who's very good at English, like, use them. I swear to God, my sister basically should have applied to medical school with me because she let through every single one of my application essays.
One thing I found helpful, I applied to quite a few schools, and like I couldn't obviously have every single essay edited because it was just too many. So I ended up kind of grouping like my personal experiences. Like, okay, like I would like somebody to review like the writing that I've produced about this internship that I did, and then that can end up being applied to a few different essays. So you can group things in a way other than just like the individual essays. so that the amount of editing is actually reasonable.
And before we move on to another topic, I'm going to post a link here. AMC has a program called Fee Assistance Program. I wish I knew that earlier because it greatly alleviated financial strain when I was actually applying. It covered all the secondary fees and up to 20 schools for the primaries. And then it also covered okay, there. It also covers MCAT registration fees to a certain extent and all the AMC MCAT resources. And those I couldn't take advantage of because I was unaware of the program. So please look into the logistics and see if you qualify. And if so, apply as quickly and as soon as possible to get all these free resources. Great. And the last question I have for all the panelists is, what misconceptions did you have before starting medical school? Has your perspective changed since starting med school? And what advice do you have for our students?
I can talk a little bit about this. So like I said before, I did mechanical engineering, and then I did 1 year of post-bac. And so my pre-med studies just weren't that comprehensive, honestly. And I was a little bit concerned that it was just like going to be really hard I thought I was going to be behind, like against, especially up against like other people who've maybe majored in bio for 4 years, but don't feel like that. The med school content is just different. I don't know how else to put it, but it's almost like everyone's just kind of learning this stuff. It's all taught in a little bit greater depth, so you're gonna be learning new things regardless. And I've found it quite manageable, despite not having an extensive background in these concepts and science concepts to be just fine, and be able to have a really fun social life and engage with the community at the same time. So don't fear if you studied something very different. Like, you're going to be just fine.
Yeah, I think it really goes back to the things that you're like we've all talked about. There's no formula, there's no like checklist. Like, you do what you need to do, you do what you like and enjoy. And I think that reflects whenever you go to do interviews, whenever you write applications, and that's what people they vibe with. Like, I remember there were a couple of interviews that I had where we didn't even talk about anything like medical that I did, like nothing about my research at all. We literally just talked about like how much I love Houston, the city of Houston. It was very random. So it's just like, you just work on yourself. I think at the end of the day, like, what any of us are trying to do is be better individuals. And as long as you're doing that, as long as you're working on yourself, you're working on what you know, like, that's going to come across and people are going to be very into you.
So I agree with what both of them have said so far. And to add something a little different, I think one thing that is really important is before you come to medical school, really practicing like self-care and how you take care of yourself and your mental health. Because if you are getting to medical school and that's something that you're trying out for the first time, it might not go as well as you want it to. So if you're able to practice that before, it'll be really helpful for you, because medical school is a stressful time. But having a good support system is really important.
I would definitely echo that. I think one of the questions that came in the Q&A is about balancing, like work-life balance, and much like Rohini just mentioned, practicing self-care is good, but also that your class, your medical school class and classmates will be a super diverse group of very interesting, smart people, and so trying to hang out with them, learn from them, will be a great way to de-stress and also kind of bond with your classmates. Like, I lived in Boston before this, and I grew up in Sacramento and went to college in Minnesota. So I've never really lived by the beach, but one of my classmates here is teaching me how to surf. And that is an excellent way to de-stress. There's no screens, there's no phones, you really can just like put it all down and just go swimming and have fun. And One of the best pieces of advice that somebody ever gave me is if you view your time off as like mandatory, the same way that you view your time on studying, I think like setting aside that time and not really feeling guilty about it will really have like a dual action. Number one, you'll be able to enjoy it much more, and number two, you'll be like more recharged and ready to go when it does come time to sit back down and get to work. So like really, value the time that you can spend on yourself, whether that's continuing to do something you really like to do from undergrad or even earlier, or trying something totally new and really leaning into it. So just take care of yourself, and it'll be okay.
I'm definitely taking notes on all these little great advice. Balance is a hard thing, and I think all of us are still trying to reach a good balance. And I think another thing I experienced in the beginning, probably still, is that I'm just intimidated by everyone who just seems so smart in every single subject. But after having some pep talks with mentors and other people, I realized that people come into medical school with different mini areas of expertise. Austin here, for example, is basically an expert on heart, everything heart. And being in the PBL group with him and him kind of spitting out all these wonderful knowledge to us could be intimidating. But after understanding that, oh, he worked and he had like this experience, I was able to put him in under a context and not be intimidated or feel bad about myself for not knowing all these things already. So, but people who do know a lot tend to speak up just to facilitate the conversations and discussions. So it might feel like everyone knows everything, but they tend to be different people who have different areas of expertise, and it's awesome. It's humbling to be in that sort of learning environment and learning from peers in addition to learning from professors.
Yeah, for sure. And that, going off that, if you ask me things about cardiology, I had 3 years of experience working in it, so I just had exposure to it. But a lot of like in our first block, which deals a lot with like immunology and cell signaling and stuff, people who did like cancer research taught me mostly everything I knew in that block. Like, in my first PBL, which for the undergrads is a practice-based learning, so they present a case at the beginning of the week and you try to work through what's going on. And coming into it, we're not really supposed to have any foundational knowledge. Some people may have seen it before from their gap year job or undergraduate research, which in that case, those people would probably know more than somebody who hasn't. But it all comes back around where, somebody else probably knows things about GI or like lungs or, anatomy or something. And when it comes up, like they'll be the ones who really kind of take the lead. And somebody like me who maybe knew stuff about cardiology, who doesn't know anything about GI or anatomy, would just learn from them. So it's a real team effort. And it's much like medicine, where you have all these specialists, like some cardiologists, some GI doctors, some cancer doctors, like oncologists. It really takes a full team to make everything work. So don't be afraid if you're not the leader every single time. Also, don't be afraid if somebody else is the leader, because your time will come around.
Very great advice. And does anyone here have any last comments or last advice you want to share before we close our panel today?
I think it's just really important to be able to ask for help. So we've put our emails in the chat. Feel free to reach out. We're really happy to answer any questions that you might have offline. And thank you for joining us.
I also want to say that no matter what year you're in, or if you're an alumni or whatever, you'll end up where you need to be. Like, you may not think it now, you'll be stressed, but you'll get in and you'll go to the place that is meant for you, and you'll be happy, you'll make the most of it, and it'll be awesome. So don't stress. It's going to be great. You're going to have a great life. And if you don't end up wanting to be a doctor, that's okay too. You'll still have a great life. So yeah, please sign up for one of the advising sessions, reach out to all of us. Like, we love helping people through this, because so many people have, I know, helped me along the way. So yeah, we're more than happy to. Also, good luck.
Okay, then we will conclude our panel for the day. Everyone, don't forget to follow Met Mentors on social media for more advising sessions and more activities from us. And thank you, Christina from the Career Center. She helped me a lot when I was applying to medical school, and it's a pleasure working with her. And all of you, if you want to have any career advising sessions, definitely check out resources from the Career Center. Thanks everyone for coming.